Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And my name is Shane McGuire. I'm one of about 30 admissions officers here in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. And I'm one of the folks that's out on the road, traveling in the fall, reading applications, helping run programs in our office. Very, very excited to join you today. And again, thanks for spending time with us and learning a little bit more about Vanderbilt. I'm going to jump into the admissions process and really kind of give you this overview of how we evaluate an application, really what that looks like, and then dive into the financial aid and scholarship process as well. And I'm going to start off by kind of talking about the mission statement of our office and kind of what we're really looking at, sort of what is central to what we do, really the spirit of admissions. And so this first slide here is really going to kind of lay that out for you. I'm just going to read it to you. At Vanderbilt, we believe in the importance of providing personal attention to each individual within the context of a high-volume, highly selective admissions process. Every applicant is treated with dignity and respect, and we train our readers to find reasons to admit each candidate rather than reasons to deny. This is the central to what we do. This is actually something that we talk about all throughout the year as an office before we hit the road in the fall, before we start reading applications in the winter. It really is central to what we do. It sits on all of our desks. It's something that we really do talk about all the time. And I really want to unpack this. There's a couple things I always really like to highlight when I'm looking at this mission statement. And the first is the personal attention piece. I really want to highlight that because every single one of you has an admissions counselor in our office who is working alongside you in this process. We divide up the entire country, the entire world, because you have someone who is going to be here for you as you move through this process. At times it can seem overwhelming, it can seem daunting as you're going through this, but know that you have a resource in our office who is here making sure you get the personal attention that you deserve as you go through this process. We also want to make sure that your application gets the attention that it deserves. You're putting lots of time and energy into filling out this application. We're going to make sure that it gets the attention that it deserves when it comes to our office. We guarantee every application gets at least 2 reviews in our process, and many may get more as they go through a committee process or a scholarship process, but we really are going to make sure that your application gets the time and attention that it deserves. The second part of this that I really like to highlight is this reasons to admit. Now, you might look at our acceptance rate and you're like, no, I don't believe that. You enjoy saying no to people. I promise that is not our approach to this. That is not what gets us out of bed every day. We get out of bed and read applications because we're looking for reasons to admit. We're looking for why you should be part of our community, why you should be here on our campus, reasons that you should be part of our class. We're approaching it through this lens of positive advocacy. To help us advocate for you, you have to advocate for yourself. And so these are the ways in the application in which you can advocate for yourself. We practice this holistic admissions process. I know that's a word you hear a lot. Sometimes I would even say it's an overused word in admissions, but it really is how we're approaching this. We are looking at this through this holistic lens. And as you look at these things up here, none of these are going to shock you in terms of these. Colleges are all that are doing holistic use a lot of these things, but I kind of want to unpack them and tell you how do we look at these things? How do we evaluate each piece of this application? These first 2 always lump together because they really are the academic foundation of the application. They're really sort of holding it together. They're really the first piece of the puzzle that has to be there to be successful in our process. You look at that first one, and it says academic achievement. You might not have expected that. You may have expected it to say GPA, but there's more to you than just that number. We have to unpack that number. What are the courses that you're taking throughout your high school experience? What are the progression of those courses over the 4 years? What are the trends in your GPA? What is the rigor of the curriculum that you're taking? And ultimately, what is the context of your high school? How do things work at your school? What's available to you as a student? And how are you taking advantage of those opportunities? Are you maximizing your experience? And ultimately, are you challenging yourself with what's available to you? And to borrow from our director, when I've heard him present on this, he always mentions you're looking to challenge yourself in a way that makes sense for you. And you've got to figure out what that looks like. What does that challenge look like where you're challenging yourself in the classroom, but you're still finding a way to balance that with things outside the classroom while also making sure that you're able to sleep, right? Because that's important in this process. So it's figuring out what that should look like, and that's going to look different for every single student. That's going to look different for every single school. Not every school is the same. In terms of the curriculum, you're going to find some schools that are AP, IB, dual enrollment, honors curriculum. Sometimes they don't have any of those designations. I've got schools that have GPA scales that are 4.0s and 5.0s and 11.0s and 37.0s and 100.0 scales and everything in between. Sometimes I think high schools make up GPA scales just to mess with admissions offices. And that's fine. It's all about understanding you in that context. I spend a lot of time on this, but it is really sort of central to what we do. So you may be sitting out there and be like, I'm at a school, they only offer 2 APs. And I have a friend who goes to a school down the street, they offer 25 APs. How do I stack up against that student? How is that evaluated? Again, it's all about what's offered at your school. So if you're at the high school that offers 2 APs, you might want to take both of those because it shows us that you really are maximizing that curriculum. If you're at the high school that offers 25 APs, you shouldn't take all of those. That's insane, right? But you should take a representative sample and show us that you are finding a way to make the most of your experience at that school. But it's all about context when we approach that academic record. On the other side of this, you have standardized test scores. We know them. We love them. SAT, ACT. We do not have a preference as to which score that you send us, and we will always take the highest of those scores. We also super score. So if you take the SAT a couple times, or you take that ACT a couple times, we will take those highest individual scores, and we will super score. And that is what we're going to be looking at in this process. Feel free to send us all of your scores. We're not necessarily looking at that full score history. We are really pulling out that super score. And the reason why is, again, this approach of positive advocacy. We always want to look at you in the best light possible. That is all that's required in our process when it comes to testing. Now, you may have heard out there, or you may see on the website that it says something about, I see these SAT 2s, AP tests, IB tests, and it says optional. And we all know that optional secretly means recommended or you're not getting in, right? You read that, and that's what you think. I promise I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that it's optional when it's secretly recommended. It truly is optional in our process. I promise you that your application will be complete with that ACT or SAT score. If you decide to go take these tests because you love taking tests, probably not the case, or there are other schools that are asking for these tests and you're scoring really, really well. You're getting above a 700 on that SAT 2, or 4s or 5s on AP tests, or 6 or 7 on higher level IB tests that could come in as college credit. Feel free to report those. Again, you are looking for ways to advocate for yourself in this process, but I promise you that your application will be complete with just that ACT or SAT score. That's the foundation of our application. We're very fortunate. The majority of our students in our process are academic rock stars. They could come here and knock it out of the park in the classroom. I have no doubt about that. So we have to dig deeper into that application. We have to sort of peel back the layers of that application. And I don't really like to go in this order. I'll be honest with you. I really like to dive into the extracurriculars next. We want to know, where are you spending your time outside the classroom? What are you passionate about? Where do your interests really lie? And I think there's this notion out there that colleges sort of have this checklist of things that we expect from every single student, right? That you're going to be part of a school club, maybe play a sport, play an instrument, do service, have a job. That we have this checklist that we expect, and that's not the case. We want you to pursue what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, and here's why. If you do that, you're probably going to be part of it for multiple years. You're going to put in more time and energy. You're going to take on more responsibility. You may ultimately take on leadership roles, whether they be unofficial or official leadership roles. And that is what's going to stand out in an application. Depth of involvement is always what we are looking for. We're looking for depth in the things that you're doing in terms of longevity, in terms of leadership. That is really what will stand out in that application. For those of you who have sat down and taken a look at an application, you'll see you've got about 10 spots and virtually no room to talk about those things on that application. But I encourage you to use that space. Give us those tidbits of information about what you're doing. It's going to feel like you're bragging on yourself, and you pretty much are, and that's okay. Tell us about your accomplishments, your achievements, your awards, the things you are doing. Brag on yourself, advocate for yourself as you fill out this list of activities. We also have kind of a small supplement. I don't even like to refer to it as a supplement, but it's this additional question that we ask, where we ask you to talk about one activity in depth. I will tell you, there's no trick to this in terms of what you pick. Pick the activity you feel like you've had the biggest impact, or you feel like you've had the most involvement, or learned something from, and expand on that. One thing we're always looking for in our students is balance. And this allows you to sort of talk about that experience outside the classroom for this very meaningful activity. Beyond the extracurriculars, we're looking at these letters of recommendation that you're going to have sent to us. We asked for 3 letters of recommendation. 1 will be from your school counselor, and 2 are going to be from teachers in your core academic subjects. Typically, you don't get to pick your school counselor. Hopefully, it's somebody that you like, but you typically don't get to pick that person. But I encourage you to get FaceTime with them. And we recognize that that is easier at some schools than others. But because they're going to be writing that letter of recommendation, do your best to get some FaceTime with that person. Teachers, you do get to pick those. And again, they're coming from those core academic subjects: math, English, social science, natural science, foreign language. But really think about the teachers that know you, that can speak to your character, that can speak to your personality, that can really give us a glimpse of the type of student you are in the classroom, but also the type of student you are in the community. But really giving us that kind of up-close glimpse of who you are. Are you the classroom discussion leader, the one who's always sort of taking charge in those big group discussions? Maybe you're a little quieter in a classroom setting, but you're a phenomenal writer. Or once you break out into small groups, you're a great collaborator, you're a great team player. Or maybe you're the person in the lab who is always doing fun experiments and really gets everyone engaged in that experience. It's going to give us an idea of the type of student you are in the classroom, in the community. 3 is all that we require. You may be wondering about, what about additional letters of recommendation? Technically, there's no limit to the number of recommendations you can send us. But I encourage you, first of all, not to get carried away, to be very kind to your admissions counselor, because we do read all of those letters of recommendation. But if you choose to go above those 3, really be thoughtful and be strategic. If you're sitting there, you've got that application put together, and you're like, there's something missing. There's like this additional voice that I really want to be in that application. Maybe it's from a coach or an employer or a mentor. Feel free to include that. But again, I promise you the 3 letters of recommendation are going to give us all we need in this review process. This last part, I save it to the end, the personal essay, because I know that all of you are thrilled at the opportunity that you have to write a college essay, right? You're so excited that you get to write us an essay? Oh, you're not? Okay. But it really is our favorite part of the application to read, because it's one of the few times as we work our way through that application where we get to hear from you. We get to hear your voice. We get a glimpse of your personality. We really get to sort of see who you are. Here's the good news. It's 650 words. That's it. That's nothing, right? You could write that in one night. You probably shouldn't, but you could. Again, it's very short. It's very sweet. And the reason I say it's a glimpse of your personality is because you cannot tell us your whole life story in 650 words. And we don't expect you to do that. We're looking to get a glimpse of your story, your background, your personality, a little bit about who you are. As you sit down to fill out this application, you're going to see you have a wide variety of questions to choose from, depending on what application platform that you use. We don't necessarily care which question you pick. There's not necessarily a right answer as to which one you pick, but really sort of think about this overarching question of, what is one thing that you want a college or university to know about you that isn't anywhere else in the application? That's really what you're trying to answer as you fill out this essay, as you write this essay. And I know you see personal essay, and this is going to seem super obvious, but the essay should be about you. I think one of the most common mistakes that we see is we see a student talking about a significant risk or event in their life, and they forget to talk about them, or they talk about this historical character or a fictional character, and by the time I get done with the essay, I want to admit that person because the student has forgotten to talk about themselves. So really make sure it is about you. You're conveying something about who you are. As you move through this process, you're going to find that it is incredibly hard to be unique. You're going to feel pressure to be unique in this process, but it's very, very hard. But if you are sharing something about yourself, you're sharing a little bit about your story, that's going to be original to you. And that's really what we're hoping to get across in this essay. Be authentic, be who you are as you do this essay. Have fun with it. I think you'll be surprised that it may be more fun than you think as you sit down to write that college essay. So just to kind of give you an idea of sort of the numbers in terms of Vanderbilt, and this is last year's admission cycle. A little over 37,000 applications last year for an admit rate of about 9.1%, for an incoming class of just over 1,600 students, which is pretty typical for us. We kind of land between that 1,600 and 1,608 mark because of that first year experience that we really want every single student to be a part of. The middle 50%, It's exactly what it sounds like. There's the middle chunk of our student population. So there's going to be 25% with scores above these ranges and 25% with scores below these ranges. Now, I know sometimes when you look at these numbers, you immediately think these are cutoffs. And that is not at all the case. It really is the middle chunk of our student population. Having scores in these ranges or higher is only going to make you more competitive in our process, but we just spent several minutes talking about all the things that we look at in an application. So good ranges to shoot for, but why do you think that there are students below these ranges that are being admitted in our process? The reason is because of that holistic admissions review. On the other side of that, do you think that every single student with a perfect score gets admitted? They don't. Again, we're approaching this through this holistic admissions process, but we want you to have these numbers so you have a general idea of what our student body looks like in terms of that academic profile. A little bit about sort of the decision plans as it comes to Vanderbilt, when to apply, how those work. As you look up here, you can see that we have 2 early decision plans and then regular decision as well. As I'm sure all of you know, early decision is a binding agreement. It's something that you do at one institution. If admitted, you're expected to attend. So it has that binding component to it. So if you're approaching that kind of senior year, you're in senior fall, and you're kind of sitting there, and you're like, you know what? Vanderbilt has clearly emerged as my number one. Like, I'm ready to start classes there now. I want to bleed black and gold for the rest of my life. And you're comfortable with sort of the financial aid homework that you've done or that out-of-pocket cost. Make sure you've done that research. If you really feel comfortable with that and you really feel like Vanderbilt is your number one, that's when I would encourage you to think about doing early decision in our process. As you can see up there, it's a pretty quick turnaround on those. It's about a 6-week turnaround on those decisions where we will give you that yes or no answer. And that is something that makes us a little bit different than some of our peers in the process. So we are going to give you that upfront yes or no answer. In the process, some of our peers may defer you into regular, but we give you that upfront answer. If you're not ready to make that commitment in early decision, you also have that regular decision plan as well. You will find out by late March. You have until May 1st to make that decision. But in that process, you could get one of 3 answers. It could be yes, no, or wait list. And I will tell you that we do actively use that wait list every single year. We've gone to it for the past, I think, 29 years in a row. On average, about 7% of our class ends up coming in off the wait list. So if you end up with that decision in the process, it's not necessarily the end of the road for you as you move through this process. I also want to kind of give you some numbers as you think about early decision and regular to sort of provide that extra context for you. Early decision 1 and 2 together, the acceptance rate is around 20%. In regular decision, it's around 7%. And I do want to contextualize that a little bit. A lot of that has to do with the number of applications that we receive in that process. We receive a little over 4,000 applications in early decision, about 33,000 plus in regular, for more or less the same number of spots in the classes. We are filling just a touch over half the class in early decision, and the rest is coming in regular. I want you to have that context. I want you to be aware of it. We want to be as transparent as we can in the process. At the same time, that should not dictate why you choose to do early decision. If you're getting to that fall of senior year, and you're like, the only reason I'm applying early decision to Vanderbilt is because of that difference in acceptance rate, you shouldn't do it. You should be doing it because Vanderbilt is that number one choice, because if you're admitted, you got to come. So you want to make sure that you really are loving that institution. You really want to be there, that Vanderbilt really is that number one choice. Shifting gears just a little bit, I kind of want to dive into the affordability piece. That is a huge issue in higher education. We recognize that's something that a lot of families are thinking about as you go through this process. And it's one of my favorite parts to talk about because of the huge commitment that Vanderbilt is making to affordability. We make 3 big commitments to every single family in this process. The first is that we are need blind for all U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens in our process. You noticed that when I talked about all the things that we look for in admission, I never mentioned anything about income, about assets, about money. That's what need blind means in our process. The second is that we meet 100% of your demonstrated need. That's going to be calculated by 2 different forms that you send our financial aid office. The first is the FAFSA. The second is that CSS profile. They're going to take those 2 forms, and together they're going to calculate that estimated family contribution, or EFC, as it's often referred to, which is essentially what they say that you and your family can contribute to your education every single year. They're going to take that number, They're going to take the total cost of attendance, tuition, fees, room, board, estimated costs for books, even thinking about your travel to and from campus every year, truly that total cost of attendance. If there is a difference there, we're going to meet that 100%. Now, there are a lot of schools across the country that will meet 100% of your demonstrated need. It's this last commitment that makes us a little bit more unique, as only about a dozen schools or so are going to meet 100% of your demonstrated need with no loans, with no money that you have to pay back when you graduate. That breaks down to about 97% need-based scholarship and about 3% work study. But it's all money that you never have to pay back when you graduate. So it is very easy when you open up one of our brochures or you get on the website and you see that big sticker price, it's very easy to get sticker shock. And frankly, I wouldn't blame you. It is very easy to see that number and potentially walk away. Before you do that, take the 10, 15 minutes to fill out that net price calculator. I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be the most exciting thing that you ever do, but it will really help you have that information, have that research, and make that informed decision as you're going through this. I'm not making any guarantees. You may fill that out, and you're like, you know what, this is still too expensive for our family, and that's fine. You may also fill it out and be like, wow, you've got this big sticker price, but after potential aid, this comes down to a range that could work for our family. Let's go through the process with the school. So really make sure you do that financial aid homework, and not just for Vanderbilt, for any school that you're thinking about. Again, there's a huge commitment from Vanderbilt to affordability as you're going through this process. On the other side of the affordability is scholarships, and thinking about that process with us. 3 big scholarships, as you can see here. The key for Vanderbilt is that you have to apply for these scholarships separately from admission. As you're going through this process, make sure you do the research on that. There are going to be some schools where your admissions application will automatically consider you for scholarships. There's going to be other schools where you have to apply separately for that, and typically the deadline is different than that admissions deadline. So make sure that you've done that research, that you know these dates and deadlines, because I don't want you to miss out on any opportunities to apply for free money, and I guarantee that your parents don't want you to do that either. So make sure you do the research in our process. Our scholarship deadline is December 1st. So that falls right between all these decision plans that I just talked about. And we need to have your admissions application on file before you have access to apply for these scholarships. So if you want to be considered for these, no matter what decision plan you choose, submit that application sometime in November so you have a couple weeks to then go into your Vanderbilt portal and fill out these scholarship applications and meet that December 1st deadline. These are sort of the big 3 as it comes to Vanderbilt. And I'd like to start with the Cornelius Vanderbilt because it is the biggest of the 3. It's also the most general of the 3. So really, it's looking for that top academics, leadership, involvement, really a lot of the things that we talked about in admission. It's really looking for those top tier applicants. The Ingram is more focused on sort of social entrepreneurship. So it's really looking for students that have that business, that entrepreneurship mind, and also want to use that to sort of engage in their community and give back to their community. The Chancellor's is really focused on social justice, on diversity, on students that are bridge builders in their high school or in their local community. You're welcome to apply for more than one of these. You can apply for all 3 of these or just the one that you feel like you're most qualified for, but definitely give these a look because they are full tuition scholarships. They also come with a stipend that you can use one summer for some sort of academic enrichment. So definitely take a look at these scholarships as you're going through the process with us. What is all this building to as you're sort of thinking about Vanderbilt as an academic community, as sort of that right fit for you? What is this all leading to? And parents, I know this is one of your favorite slides during the presentation because you want to know if your son or daughter comes to our institution, are they going to be successful when they graduate? And as you look at these numbers, they certainly are. About 64% of our students every year are going straight into the workforce and being employed within 6 months of graduation. You can see another big chunk there, usually 25 to 30%, depending on the year, going straight into graduate and professional school. And one of my favorite statistics to use about that is that 72% are getting into and enrolling in their top choice graduate or professional school. So they're not just getting into graduate schools, they're getting into the ones that they really want to go to. And then this last group, depending on the year, 5 to 10%, are doing things like internships or research or traveling during that year or doing things like Teach for America, AmeriCourse, or these really cool programs when they graduate. And then, as you can see there, a lot of our students are taking advantage of internships. And I think a lot of that has to do with our location. We're a mile and a half from the center of downtown Nashville, so it's very easy for students to take part in internships during their time on campus. We send students all across the country and even across the world to do internships, but being in a city allows our students to really get that amazing professional development during their time on campus. Thanks for joining us today and tuning into the presentation. If you want more information, feel free to hop on our website at admissions.vanderbilt.edu, or you can also check on our virtual tour to get a little bit more information about life on campus. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.